Hey everyone, so for quite some time I've been asked to talk about myself a bit more and the behind the scenes stuff on the channel. I'm not really one for talking about myself or being self-indulgent or putting myself over, brother. I'm kinda private in real life and I try to fly under the radar in most of my endeavours, so putting this kind of video together is a bit hard for me. But I understand too, you guys watch this channel quite a lot and you're curious about how things get put together. You're maybe curious about me and what I think about certain topics. Today, I've decided to answer a lot of common questions that I receive, and I also asked you guys to send in any other questions you may have, and I'm going to try my best to answer. I got way more than I could ever dream of answering in one video, so I'll be keeping a big list and we'll do this again maybe next year or the year after. So here we go. Hopefully this answers some of the questions you've had about me and the Wrestling Bios channel. I'll break this down into 3 parts. Part 1 will be questions about me and the channel, Part 2 is going to be questions about Reliving the War, and the final part will be random questions about wrestling and anything else really. What's your name, what country and region are you from? I'm from Belfast, Northern Ireland. Not Scotland, not Wales, not Australia. Belfast, Northern Ireland. It's right here. My name is Ryan. What did you do before YouTube full time? What made you decide to start a YouTube channel? I worked night shifts for a pretty well-known parcel delivery company. I worked in the warehouse unloading trailers and loading vans. I loved it. It was physically demanding and it kept me in good shape, but working night shifts also totally kills your social life. I'm not sure why I started a YouTube channel, to be honest. I think no one I knew personally wanted to listen to me talk about wrestling, so I talked to you guys about it instead. Seriously though, I don't know what motivated me to do it. How do you come up with the topics for your videos? I just think of them on the spot really, and I keep a notepad document of everything I want to cover. I also check out what the guys on Patreon have suggested, and those ideas get added to the document. Is this your first or only YouTube channel? Have you produced other content before Wrestling Bios? Yes, this is my first and only channel. I'd like to start a second channel just for wrestling games, but I don't have the time, unfortunately. Will you cover this wrestler on the channel? The only things I won't cover is New Japan and AEW stuff, because they've been harsh with copyright claims in the past. I hope this changes because I had a Jushin Liger series planned and I wanted to cover NWO Japan, but currently that's impossible. As for your requests, yes, I will cover them, but it's a question of when I can cover them. We have got a request thread on Patreon that's totally filled too, so while I'd love to cover everyone's requests, I need to prioritize what gets brought out next. Who creates the remixes on your channel? I create the remixes that you hear in Wrestling Bios. I've been messing about with music programs long before I started YouTube, and I still use some pretty old software to put the mixes together, but yeah, those are all my remixes unless stated in the credits, although I've only used someone else's work 2 or 3 times before. I have no musical qualifications, completely self-taught. I've always been into music since I was a kid, and I used to mess around on turntables when I was a little shithead teenager, so the remixes and things of that nature were something I could bring to the videos from previous experience. All the remixes are put up on Patreon for supporters to download. There's even some that have never been used, and most remixes are also extended for their Patreon releases. What's up with all the wrestling video game uploads? Those aren't what I subscribed for. Honestly, it's to give me a break. Putting together video game uploads is way easier for me than covering a rivalry, a feud, or a wrestling event. If I wake up and don't feel like facing another day of scripting, I'll play a game instead and talk about that. I'm pretty passionate about wrestling video games too, and video games in general, but I know when to stay in my lane also. People didn't really like the Def Jam videos, for example. Why don't you cover full careers in your videos anymore? Because I realised you can't cover everything in a 25 or 30 minute video. I like to dig into storylines, matches and rivalries a bit more now. The intention is to provide full career retrospectives by combining these videos into one long compilation, like how I did with the NWO and the Hulk Hogan series. Those older videos I made, yeah, I skipped over way too much stuff in those. They're okay for a brief overview, but they aren't good career retrospectives. How do you script episodes? What's the workflow? Okay, an example, Reliving the War. I watch both shows back to back. I don't take notes, I just watch them casually on TV. I'll then put them on PC and create a script as I watch the matches and promos again in the order they're going to appear in Reliving the War. So I'll watch the Raw match while pausing and typing out what I want to say. I'll then move on to the Nitro match and do the same thing. And while I'm doing this, I'll also take screen grabs and videos of what I've typed out in the script. Everything is 100% scripted, although there are times when I laugh or go slightly off script, and I try to keep those moments in the video so it sounds less robotic, although I do admit there's room for improvement. After a whole script is done, I record the voiceover. I'll then edit the voiceover and remove a ton of mistakes, and then I'll start editing the video using the clips and screen caps I grabbed earlier. The moment the video gets done, it gets sent to Patreon, and the supporters there are great at pointing out any mistakes I may have made. A second edit is then created for YouTube, and that's it really. It sounds tedious because it is tedious, but I'm not complaining. A non-Reliving the War video is done pretty much the same way, only I'll list out the points, promos and matches that I want to talk about before scripting. And as for the video game uploads, I'll play the video game for a couple of hours just to refresh my memory. I'll then make a script and then I'll play again to capture footage. This is the very basic workflow, by the way. Things always tend to go wrong at one point or another, and sometimes I just have to leave my PC to take care of other things. How do you have time to make so many videos? Do you have a team? I script the videos, I capture the footage and screen grabs, I edit the videos, I upload the videos, I make the remixes. It's all me. I do get a little help on the admin side from my wife. She helps me keep on top of Patreon. She'll let me know when I have messages I need to respond to. She'll sort out the member list for the video end credits, things like that. If she has time too, she would make spreadsheets for the Raw and Nitro matches for Reliving the War and what goes head to head. But all the video content, the final product that you see on YouTube, it's a one-man team. How do I have so much time? I do this as a full-time job now, and I kind of treat it like a job. I'm pretty strict on myself because I know I've only got one shot at this. If the channel gets taken down, then at least I can say I didn't half-ass it, you know? I know how lucky I am. I know many people would love to do what I do, and I don't take it for granted. So I put in the time, I clock in and clock out. I give up loads of free time because I genuinely enjoy doing this. And if and when the channel disappears, at least I can say I gave it my best shot. I'd love to get someone in to help, but I know I'd be a shit person to work for because I'd want stuff done right away. So I stay clear from bringing people in. I'm watching the shows anyway for scripts, so I might as well capture the footage while I'm doing it. There's literally gigabytes of videos and photos that I work with after capturing everything for just one video, and I kinda know my own mess. I think an editor would shit themselves if I sent everything over and said, right, complete this in one day. Are you still happy making these videos? Maintaining mental health is as important as being physically healthy. I'm not gonna lie, it can be tough sometimes, but I'm very happy making these videos. If I feel stressed out, I'll just switch the PC off, do some work around the house, play a video game, and come back to it the next day. I agree though, mental health is extremely important, and I do ensure I'm good mentally when working on these videos, don't worry about that. I love pro wrestling, I get to talk about what I love, so I really can't complain. Do you plan on streaming on Twitch? I'm fucking awful without a script, and even at that, I'm still pretty bad with a script. I tried streaming before and there was way too much dead air. I realised then that it wasn't for me. I'd love to watch full episodes of Raw and Nitro and talk about what's going on, like, reliving the war live, but it wouldn't be good. Plus, I don't think there's a platform where I could get away with that without getting slapped for copyright. Will you be covering the WWE 2K games? Yes, and the Smackdown series. What have you learned about yourself since undertaking a much appreciated project? Thank you. I've learned my limits in terms of the work I can do on a daily basis. I've learned how to take on constructive criticism in a way that I know will work for both the channel and for viewers, while also separating criticism that really isn't constructive at all, like what this dickhead said right here when I announced the Q&A. I've also learned that there's still like-minded people out there who take pro wrestling for what it is, and they still have fun with it. It's great that people still appreciate the era of pro wrestling that I enjoy, and having you guys as my audience is awesome. How do you get away with using WWE footage in your videos? I don't. Many of the videos on the channel have the ad revenue going straight to WWE. Recently, more and more videos have been getting completely taken down by WWE too, so it's been kinda tough. They've been particularly hard to deal with these past 5 or 6 months or so, but yeah, the answer is I don't get away with it. You can say fair use all you want, but some companies just don't care, and that's the truth of the matter. It can be soul destroying, especially if you look at your channel as your main source of income, and then you've lost that income after working on a video for days, weeks, even months for some creators, but that's not the kind of thing viewers want to hear about, I know. Do you ever get feedback or any commentary from anyone in the wrestling industry about your videos? Yeah, it mostly happens on Twitter, and it fucking blows my mind that people within the business who I watched as a kid have checked out my videos, or they've reached out or replied to my messages. Diamond Dallas Page has given me wonderful feedback. Eric Bischoff gave me a follow on Twitter. Mick Foley watched the Lost in Cleveland video and he shared it out. Lance Storm thought his WCW video was cool. There's been a few for sure, and it still makes me excited when these guys reach out. DDP though is the one that went above and beyond. He initially reached out to me because he enjoyed the Savage vs Page video. We got chatting and he agreed to come on Reliving the War. He's a good dude and he took a lot of time out to help me and give the channel credibility, so I'm forever grateful. Will you make a video with another content creator? I've learned that my accent and my voice doesn't go well on other people's videos. I sound awful next to creators who sound, well, a lot more professional than what I do, so I tend to just stick with my own channel. Also, it's harder than you think to put together collabs. Sometimes the other creator will have too much on their plate and vice versa. I've got ideas of what I could potentially do with others, but yeah, I just don't think collabs I'm featured in turn out all that well. In the future though, maybe. There are creators that I couldn't say no to, but for now, I'm happy doing my own thing. Who is your favourite YouTuber? I've got loads of favourites, the same way I have loads of favourite wrestlers. We'll talk about that in a moment. On a personal level, OSW Review not only make the best wrestling content on this platform, but Jay has helped me more than you guys will ever know. Jay still helps to this day with any questions I may have. He's put up with me getting pissed off at dumb YouTube shit, and he's just a really nice, genuine dude, and the content he and the OSW lads put together is phenomenal. I also like the gaming historian, GameSack, Botchamania, of course, Larry Bundy Jr., Justin Wang, Dave Knows Wrestling is probably the most underrated wrestling guy on YouTube in my opinion. Cinemassacre, that's a channel where I could watch the old videos over and over again. Matt McMuscle's What Happened series has never had a bad episode. There's a lot I like to watch, and normally I'd watch these guys while editing my own videos. Will you cover Smackdown vs Thunder on Reliving the War? No, Smackdown vs Thunder will not get covered the same way Raw and Nitro gets covered, because I don't have enough time to do it weekly. I'd have to give up one of the other weekly videos that appear on the channel, and I don't want to do that because not everyone watches Reliving the War. I do plan on including Smackdown and Thunder results into the current Reliving the War though, I just need to work out the best way to do it. Smackdown vs Thunder wasn't even a competition, it wouldn't make for a good series guys, think about it. Will you cover Raw vs Smackdown after Reliving the War? I've no plans on covering Raw vs Smackdown or the Ruthless Aggression era after Reliving the War. I think I'll take a break and then have a think about it, but right now the answer is no. It's too much work to think about right now. The same goes for AEW vs NXT. What's up with Glacier? Why don't you like him? I like Glacier. How can you not like Glacier? That all started in Reliving the War when I pretended to get excited about his debut. His debut was then delayed for months, but WCW kept showing the teaser videos, so I made this stupid little thing out of it where I would get more and more annoyed every week that Glacier didn't show up. When he did eventually arrive, I was so annoyed that he showed up late that he became my arch nemesis. It's just a silly little thing for the show, but I have kept it going for a while. I think people liked it when I got annoyed because I was so flat in my videos everywhere else, so I think that's why it caught on. It was a bit of a change, but no, I don't dislike Glacier. That's all put on for the show, no matter how harsh the trolling gets. Do you plan on ending Reliving the War after Nitro's 83-week streak? The plan is to cover everything right up to the final episode of Nitro. I want to make a big conclusion video too, and then the series will end and I'll take a break. I might go back though and cover the pay-per-views of 95 and 96 that didn't get full uploads, just to have everything complete. Keep in mind though that this is all stuff that I would like to do. Things could happen out of my control that stops it from happening. Finishing Reliving the War though is a personal goal for me. I even considered ending all uploads on the channel after the conclusion video because it would be a great way to bow out of YouTube, but I'll probably still need to keep working at that point. It would be awesome though. Will DDP come back on Reliving the War, and if not, is it possible to get anyone else that was around that time frame to give some insight? I hope to have DDP on again, and I have a date in mind, but I need to put it over to him first. He's a busy man, but yes, I do hope to have Diamond Dallas Page on the channel again. I've reached out to Eric Bischoff previously, and he initially said he'd come on, but then he declined. No idea why, but I can't get mad. And I also reached out to Glacier, but he never got back. I don't blame him, to be honest. But yeah, anyone who was on Raw and Nitro during that time period, I definitely have them on. I'm just not very proactive in reaching out to people. How do you think the WCW invasion should have been handled? I think Vince should have waited it out until the other guys' Turner contracts had expired, and I also think the WWF could have used that time to get the other guys used to working WWF style matches. The fact that WCW guys were treated like lesser performers also didn't help. I'll never forgive them for what they did with DDP, but yeah, they really should have waited until they could get guys like Hogan, Hall, Nash, Steiner. They should have waited a little. It's Glacier versus the Booty Man in a loser leaves wrestling forever match. Who do you pick, or do you hope for a double pin? Double pin for sure, or what about one guy topping out while he's also getting pinned? You know, that kind of predicament? Yeah, do that. Who do you think was the greatest horseman during the Monday Night Wars, and why is it Mongo McMichael? Malenko and Benoit were definitely the most consistent if you're a work rate guy, but if you're purely in it for the entertainment, then yeah, I agree, Mongo was untouchable. Do you think WCW would have survived if Eric Bischoff's bid was chosen by Time Warner? With the proper financial backing behind him and the idea of taking WCW to the Las Vegas Strip on a weekly basis, yeah, I do think WCW could have survived, but not in the way it once did. I think they could have survived, but they wouldn't have been competitive. The war would still be over. Eric had some good relationships with some big players. I think he could have made it work, but not in the way it once operated. When Reliving the War first started, you played it pretty straight. After a while, in-jokes crept in gradually. Did you originally plan on keeping it straight, or did you plan on adding humour over time? The show has evolved into must-watch YouTube, thanks. But thank you. It was originally supposed to be straight to the point. I think it was the Glacier stuff that started the humour, and gonna be honest, I didn't think people would find anything I said funny, or at least I didn't think people came to the channel for anything other than wrestling facts or history lessons. I worry all the time that the humour comes across in bad taste, or I'm coming across as a tryhard, but people seem to like it, and I took the positive feedback as, well, a positive. I know there's some who don't like it, they don't like the swear words, and they don't find it funny at all when I make fun of wrestling. But really, if Reliving the War kept going as a no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point show, then it would have got pretty boring after a few months. It was a natural progression, and I'm actually really happy that people get a kick out of my shit jokes. Great question, though. What are your thoughts on the current wrestling or sports entertainment industry? I don't really like ripping modern wrestling apart because I was watching the WWF during its mid-90s low points. Everyone hated that, but I thought it was still fun. I do feel though there's a lack of true bona fide megastars today that would appeal to those outside of the wrestling bubble. There's also a lot of wrestling to consume nowadays. You need to set aside a day to catch up on all the WWE programs, the AEW stuff, and whatever else you're into like New Japan, TNA and all that. I think there's too much content for those who want to watch absolutely everything. I want to make a video on this subject in the future, by the way. There's definitely more to discuss here. But yeah, I prefer the late 90s and 2000s stuff. I do try to watch all WWE and AEW pay-per-views though, but I normally don't watch them live anymore. Quite a few people wanted to know if I watch AEW, and I do try to watch it when I can, and I find the promotion fascinating from a TV standpoint. I like that they're creating a whole lot of buzz, but they also need to do some work on improving things, especially in their mid-card and lower mid-card, in my opinion anyway. I know die-hard AEW fans don't like to hear it, but the mid-card isn't good. The WWE, yeah, it's very tough to sit through. Very, very tough to sit through. Watching Raw nowadays feels like a chore and I struggle to make it to the end. What are some of your personal dream matches? AJ Styles versus Shawn Michaels would have been a blast. Hulk Hogan versus Steve Austin would have been fun just to see who went over, brother. I'd like to one day see Kenny Omega versus AJ Styles before it's too late, but if we're talking pure fantasy matches, Ricky Steamboat in his prime versus Kenny Omega, Kurt Angle versus Bret Hart, Brock Lesnar versus Ming, Bryan Danielson versus the Great Muta. I've got loads I'd like to see. Maybe that would make a good video in the future too. Top 3 chocolate bars. I'll give you 3 guesses as to who put that question forward. What bar? Galaxy Caramel, Toffee Crisp, and the Mighty Lion Bar. Wash it down with a can of Coke. What was your proudest memory as a wrestling fan back then as a kid or teen? Mine was getting Bret Hart sunglasses in Berlin 1994 when I was 10 years old. And check it out, here's a picture of Bret's signed sunglasses. That's cool and I want them badly. I'd say getting my own signed pair of Bret Hart glasses, but this was done during a spoken word tour. They're still awesome, but not as awesome as getting a pair before a Hitman match. Consider me jealous, good sir. Do you smell what The Rock is cooking? Yes I do. Who's your favourite wrestler, the greatest of all time, or your Mount Rushmore of wrestling? It changes all the time. I'm a fan of professional wrestling. If AJ Styles puts on a great match next week on TV, then he'll become my favourite wrestler for the week, you know. It's hard to say who my all-time favourite is, but guys who I could watch all day include Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Steve Austin, and Ric Flair. I'll add Sting to those 4 and I'll say that's my Mount Rushmore of wrestling. Ask me again next week and I'll probably change it. Greatest of all time? Bret Hart. What's your favourite match ever? It's between Bret Hart and Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at In Your House Bad Blood, and Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. But if I was forced to pick one right now, I'd say Hart versus Austin at Mania 13. What's your favourite pay-per-view? WrestleMania 19. What would you consider the best rivalry that really captivated you? Bret versus Austin, hands down. Savage versus Hogan, Hogan versus Warrior, that kind of stuff I only got to see through videotapes. Those weren't rivalries that I lived week in and week out because I didn't have access to the shows. I'd have to wait for the VHS tapes to come out and my parents would buy them for me, so it's not like I could see what was happening on a weekly basis, you know. With Bret versus Austin, I was totally 100% invested. That's the one that completely captivated me and made me want to see what would happen the following week, as any good rivalry should. I was into wrestling before Bret vs Austin, but I was into that feud so much, and so was everyone else at the time. What was the first wrestling game you played? Did it make you a bigger fan of wrestling? And what is the most underrated wrestling game? I think the first wrestling game I played was the WrestleFest arcade machine. I had a ZX Spectrum as a kid, but I didn't own any wrestling games for it. The first wrestling game I owned on home console, I think, was WWF Super WrestleMania for the Mega Drive, and I was already a fan of wrestling around that time, so the games didn't make me a fan or anything like that. I've got a soft spot for WCW vs. The World. I think that gets overlooked and the roster is really good. WWE All-Stars 2, I really enjoyed and I still play that now. There's quite a lot of depth to that game that I don't think a lot of people truly appreciate. If you watch that game on YouTube, you can see who truly knows how to play it against those who only spent a few hours playing it. It's one of the main reasons I still keep my PS3 plugged in. What is your take on Chris Benoit as a wrestler? Do you think he was one of the best? Benoit was an excellent wrestler, and yes, he was one of the best. I've no interest in celebrating him though, and I know that too is a touchy subject for a lot of people, but I'll talk about his work in the ring and I've no issue praising his matches. I was actually a huge fan of Chris during his days in the Horsemen, but there's no forgiving what he did. It's inexcusable, and I find it a bit fucked up that people try to find excuses for him. I know too that people are a bit weird with me covering his matches on Reliving the War, but I'm not going to pretend they didn't happen. What's your favourite type of jam? Brett's Jam, silly, available at chinlocks.com. Which wrestler upon your journey of watching everything would you say you've got a newfound respect for? Somebody a little better in the ring than you used to give credit for. Growing up, I never really appreciated mid-90s 1-2-3 Kid, but what a talent. I have a newfound appreciation for Lex Luger. I kinda let the internet echo chamber judge Luger for me, and the internet was fucking wrong. Luger was so over during the Nitro era that I now find it insane that people put him down. Again, you gotta stop looking for work rate and just appreciate what some guys brought to the table. Brian Clark, that's another one I appreciate more. Canyon too, and not because he beats up Glacier every other week. Marty Jannetty, there's someone who gets memed on quite a lot, and he does deserve some of that too, no doubt. But Marty was still putting on good matches in late 1995 and 1996. What's one of your most memorable complete markout moments in wrestling? Bret Hart defeating The Undertaker at SummerSlam 1997. The finish was so well done, and being the big Hitman fan that I was, I just lost my shit when that happened. It was so good. I also marked out for the NWO coming to the WWF. I thought that was amazing at the time. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. I've went on way too long here. I've saved your other questions and we'll come back to this another time, but hopefully you got a better insight into the channel and hopefully you enjoyed the other questions and answers today. Hopefully too, I didn't come across as too self-indulgent here, but I wanted to answer everything truthfully and answer the questions that you guys ask quite a lot. But thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.